Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Swarthmore Borough Council Legislative Session for Tuesday, October 14th, 2025. We're going to start with roll call. Ms. McCahill?
Here.
Ms. McLeod?
Here.
Ms. Seymour, who's by phone?
Here.
Mr. Therian?
Here.
Ms. Garland?
Here.
Mr. Boonen?
Against my doctor's advice, I'm here.
Thank you for being here. Mayor Spiegel?
I'm here.
Solicitor Scott?
Here.
And the borough manager is away this evening. We're going to take some things out of order tonight for lots of different reasons. There are many moving parts, but we're going to start with the mayor. The mayor has asked for the floor, so that's where we will begin.
Thank you, Jill. Am I on?
Yes, sir.
I am. I just asked Jill if I could speak for just a minute. Say a couple of things that I think probably should have been said last meeting, and I didn't take the opportunity to do it, and I wish that I had. We know that when issues such as the ordinance that's going to come in front of us tonight come up, emotions run high. However, there were comments that were made last month that I think were unfounded, uncalled for, and unnecessary, and quite honestly, not terribly helpful in terms of moving along the conversation between council and community. I understand that things that council does not always do things that the community feels appropriate. I mean, I have my own issues with issues that come up before council as well. But I have to say, I have never once questioned the integrity of anybody sitting out here. Now, you can sit here and roll your eyes all you want, but I'm telling you that essentially, if we're trying to resolve these issues, then we need to do it in a civil and an appropriate way. We would not, I don't think that any of us would stand for a member of council talking to the public the way the public talks to council. I think that, regardless of the fact that they may be elected officials, does not necessarily give anybody the right to demean them, disrespect them, or to call into question their integrity. If you have questions or issues, bring them forward. But in a public meeting, I think it's totally inappropriate. So I don't want to sound like a scolding school marm, but I just felt that I wanted to set the tone for tonight's meeting before we started, to try to recognize that we all have differences of opinion sometimes, but we can work those things out in a more respectful way. So I yield back to council.
Thank you, Marty. We're going to start with public comment. Speaking of public comment, please come up, state your name, your address, be mindful of the 3-minute time limit. It will be strictly enforced. Please come up, Susan. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Public comment is at the microphone, and I'll call on the person who wants to give public comment. Susan, you go first. Sir, just take a seat, and we'll call on you next. Thank you.
Susan Wright, WRIGHT, 147 Park Avenue, Swarthmore. I'm here to add my voice to those who are urging that we not vote for the by right ordinance that's on the agenda tonight. I've given reasons before. I'm going to restrict myself to one thing that I think has not been really addressed in my knowledge. I haven't been at all the meetings, I confess, but I have tried to read the Swarthmore and keep abreast of it. We have 2 properties within the 4 that have the possibility of some kind of a compromise in the environment. And I don't think that's been addressed very well at all. I know a planning commissioner who is characterized as an environmental lawyer brought it up, and it seems to have just dropped out of the conversation. I think using a conditional use would make it possible to at least look at this. I think doing by right completely forecloses the issue. I know at the August meeting Mr. Scott brought up the fact that with the traffic study that could not be used under the land use because the proposed structures were too small, that there was an alternative certification process that might address even more of the issues than a normal traffic study under the land use ordinance would have addressed if it had been applicable. I don't know of any such alternative environmental ordinance. Maybe there is one and I'm just unaware of it. The only thing I could see when I did some quick research on it is something called the Land Recycling Program, parentheses Act 2, which does encourage, by incentives, people to address these kind of issues on lots that are going to be redeveloped. However, it is totally voluntary, and we have heard from some planning commissioners who are much more familiar with developers today than I am, that it's very unlikely any developer would do this on its own if they're not required to do it. I understand the reservations, everyone. There's 4 of you who were on council during the whole 110 Park Avenue condo process, and I understand your reservations about the conditional use statute that we have right now in our zoning code. I understand that, unfortunately, when they amended the 2011, is that it?
If you could just finish your sentence, thank you.
Okay, amended the 2011 ordinance, they didn't properly amend the conditional use to really apply carefully to a demolition ordinance. But I'm sorry, I don't think that's enough reason not to do a conditional use instead of by right.
Thank you, Susan. Public comment. Oh, yes, sir, that, please come up.
Good evening, everyone. I'm John Alston. Sarah, Nathan, and I live at 301 South Chester Road, right on the, better? I should know how to handle the mic, huh? We respectfully ask that new construction at 225 and 300 Chester Road be subject to the conditional use process. And I'd like to give you a few reasons why in the next 2.5 minutes. Swarthmoreans love trees, gardens, and in general, a modest kind of beauty. This is an obvious community interest. You guys love planting so much that whenever Sarah and I are out there pulling out weeds and doing our landscaping, that somebody we don't know stops and they cheer us on. Bring a shovel next time. Thank you so much. The Yale-Chester Road intersection is awful and dangerous. About a month ago on a Friday afternoon, I was coming home from work and I was crossing Yale with the light, and a car screeched and stopped right in front of me. And I looked at the car and I made eye contact with the driver, and then the passenger yelled, and this is true, I'm not making this up, "Walk effing faster." And I didn't have a comeback because, you know, you're not really in flight or fight mode when you're walking in Swarthmore, so this was unusual. I don't cross, I jaywalk on Yale, and I also jaywalked across Harvard because folks are desperate to make left turns during rush hour. The medical building and Swarthmore Square, they are not beautiful buildings, despite George Clooney looking at me every morning. We made eye contact this morning. He was looking out my kitchen, and he's right there just looking at me every day. But here's what I wonder. Is it possible to build attractive units that embrace our community's commitment to nature and beauty? Is it possible to build attractive units that facilitate efficient traffic flow and increase pedestrian safety? I invite the folks who want to build without limits to sit with me on my porch. I don't know you, and I'd like to get to know you, on a Friday afternoon so we can watch rush hour traffic together. I can offer you really, really good scotch, and we can sit and we should watch the traffic, and maybe we can imagine together something that respects the interests of the borough, celebrates our love of everything, and makes as many people happy as possible. That would be great. And I know it's complicated, but it is not impossible for a group of people that think the way that you do. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much.
Richard?
Thank you. Richard Newton, 316 South Chester. I'd like to back up what John says, and I'd also be very happy to work with the traffic engineers to look at that intersection, because living nearby, it is a challenge, to say the least. With reference to the proposed ordinance revisions, I believe that one of the enduring characteristics, qualities of Swarthmore's physical character is its diversity, the variety of housing types, both multifamily and single family, styles and arrangements, and importantly, outside the centre of the ville, the setbacks that have allowed the rich landscape character that we see today to evolve over more than a century, and that continues to define the borough's landscape character, and that John alluded to. For me, the imposition of a single, by right, zoning criterion for development across the whole borough, while maybe procedurally an expedient strategy, carries with it the potential to undermine that very variety. It risks homogenizing what is, even if it sounds like a contradiction, a physical character that is diverse yet coherent. I do not have a simple answer. However, while not perfect, the conditional use process, particularly for the more challenging sites, such as those along South Chester Road identified in the comprehensive plan for multifamily housing, provides an important opportunity not only for community voices to be heard, but also to ensure that future development contributes to, rather than diminishes, that diverse character that defines our borough. In a complex environment with many voices, agendas, goals, establishing conditional use, in my view, remains a practical, balanced way to protect the qualities of the place we all value so deeply. Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on.
Hi, Eve Buckley, 310 South Chester Road. This is about the non-conforming sites ordinance. At last week's council meeting, the final comment came from the chair of our planning commission, who said that past practice has been for the commission to draft legislation related to zoning issues and send it to council for review. This is because zoning is complex and commission members have decades of experience in architecture and related fields. In the case of the non-conforming sites ordinance, that process was reversed. Council drafted it, then rejected the commission's advice initially that the ordinance be conditional use rather than by right. I believe this is because several council members had a negative experience, very negative, with respect to the conditional use provisions available for 110 Park. But planning commission members have decades of experience with multiple cases, and we're quite fortunate to have this abundance of professionals willing to volunteer for our planning commission. I've also gotten the sense in recent meetings that some local advocates of affordable housing see planning commissions as historically conservative, since they have at times been responsible for drafting restrictive zoning that blocked less privileged families from moving into particular communities. This was, I think, because that is what those commissions were tasked with doing in those contexts by their communities. In the case of Swarthmore now, there is community interest in providing smaller scale homes that would cost less than large homes. The ordinance before you allows for, but does not incentivize, construction of small residential units on the non-conforming sites. It's quite likely in current market conditions that developers will build, say, 3 townhomes on each site, each larger than what residential zoning allows for duplex construction and each very expensive. Our planning commission can draft legislation that would incentivize construction of smaller units by making this a condition of allowing the developer to build beyond what residential zoning permits. I think it's important for council to understand that residents of Chester Road have been sufficiently angry about the draft ordinance and its likely impact on our neighborhood that we have seriously discussed suing council in hopes of stopping it. No one wants to move forward to this. There are many ugly aspects of that sort of process. Borough Council can avoid such outcomes by passing the draft ordinance for 630 Yale only, a site for which the measure has broad support. You can then ask Planning Commission to develop what they believe to be the most appropriate zoning ordinance for the non-conforming sites along Chester Road, a task that should have fallen to them from the beginning. Council's role is to represent the community's interests, and this broadly represents what people have been requesting. And for anyone who remains on council following the upcoming election, I hope that you will return to the practice of asking the Planning Commission to develop zoning legislation for your review rather than taking on that responsibility. I think we'll all benefit from their input. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment. Steve, come on up. Nice to see you.
You too. You hearing me okay? Steve Platt, 21 Oberlin Ave, resident since 1985. I've been reading about and listening to varied voices concerning the non-conforming zoning decision for many, many weeks. I've come to the conclusion that despite the hard work and changes made to the by right sort of approach, Swarthmore and its residents, in particular the residents immediately in the immediate vicinity of the properties in question, are best served by a conditional use or other process. I was struck greatly by the front page article in the most recent Swarthmorean. The article discussed the varied nature of the four properties, and that varied is very important in many ways. A single by rights ordinance, no matter how written, would either be very loose to accommodate the differences, or very detailed, crimping the per plot flexibility. Many have spoken to this, so I won't continue in that manner. But one of the most impactful things I read when I was going through the Swarthmorean article was Scarlett's reporting of the Delaware County Planning Commission's review of the proposed ordinance. To quote, it presented a very positive view of the ordinance, citing specificity, clarity, and formalized dimensional standards that are stipulated, making the ordinance understandable to any interested party. This is an excellent description of a well-written ordinance. I've worked for many decades in standards and compliance, and in driving around through the areas, I would frequently see banners outside of manufacturing facilities. We are ISO 9001-2000 certified. ISO 2000 is an achievement for a company. It details that the processes are standardized, clear, formalized, and repeatable. Pretty much the same thing Delaware County was saying. And we have a joke in the industry, in the standards industry. You can build an ISO 2000 cement life preserver. Yes, that's it. It's basically, it would be manufactured according to deep documented, clear, well-defined processes, and you wouldn't want to be throwing one if you were drowning. If we have a single by rights ordinance, I greatly fear that we will be consigning Swarthmore to a cement life preserver. We are potentially finding an easy route, a specific, clear, well-defined, well-understood, formally dimensional standard that does not serve our citizenry and our future. Please don't approve a cement life preserver for us. Reject by rights and allow each potential developer to work in a manner best suited to both the location and the citizenry, especially those most greatly affected by the potential new construction.
Thank you. I see a hand. Come up, please.
I'm Carol Nakanoff at 302 South Chester Road. I certainly support a conditional use ordinance, but I'm also a realist. I really appreciate what Eve and other people have been saying about why this would be better. But I've had an opportunity, as have some other people in this room, to read something that some members of Planning and Zoning and some members of Borough Council have been working on. And that is an amendment to this ordinance, which I hope is appropriate for me to speak to. It does go quite a long way to address concerns that have been voiced by members of the community, especially those who want the residents near the auto body shop on Yale to get what they've been working toward, and at the same time, to address residents' concern about dense development at the corner of Yale and Chester, an especially busy intersection that doesn't need the potential addition of 16 to 32 more cars turning, entering, and exiting properties on either side of that intersection, partly in light of what John mentioned. That would add to the dangers already present to pedestrians and drivers in that spot. The amendment does not eliminate the prospect of such dense development at 225, 300, or the gas station, but at least subjects development of more than 4 units on any site to conditional use. And one of the provisions of section 1264.11 of Borough Code stipulates, among other things, that the conditional use serves the best interest of the borough and community and does not injure the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. Once conditional use is triggered, I like the inclusion of some good environmental considerations that I understood, David, that you may have had a hand in. A menu approach that the Environmental Advisory Committee that I serve on has seen in some other jurisdictions. So, thumbs up on that. I have 2 questions I'm not sure you're allowed to answer during public comment period, but would be helpful for me to understand. One of them is really simple. The amendment talks of, quote, properties that are street facing on a state route, e.g. SR 320. Does that mean that the main entrance to the eventual but hypothetical development faces Chester Road as opposed to Yale, or that the official address, 300 South Chester, 225 South Chester, etc., is on the state road?
It's the address.
Thank you. The other question is, when conditional use considerations come into play, who bears the burden of demonstrating that a proposed use is consistent with the criteria laid out? Is the burden on the developer? Is it on those who might object to a particular proposed use? Or is it just up to planning and zoning? Or is that borough council?
It's your favorite borough council.
Can I?
No, what's the burden of proof?
Oh, the burden of proof.
The burden of proof.
It's certainly on the
It's
petitioner.
complicated.
It's complicated.
But finish your comments and then
I'll make it very quick.
Sorry, your time is up, but please finish your thought.
Okay, I wish building 8 units on those properties were completely off the table, but this amendment is the best proposal I've seen so far. So thank you for at least trying to respond.
a quick answer to that question.
Please.
Kind of got half answered.
Yeah.
With a conditional use or a special exception, the burden's on the applicant to demonstrate that they have met the conditions. Once they have, the burden is on opponents to demonstrate that the use should not be permitted.
And the
it's
finding of fact.
shifting, yeah. And the conditional use council is the hearing body. With a special exception, the zoning hearing board is, same burdens of proof, same standards.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robin Schaufler, 21 Oberlin Avenue. And my husband's a hard act to follow. But now that I know that it's not illegal to do spot zoning, I would really like to see 630 Yale split out from the other 3 properties so that it can be dealt with in short order and be changed into residential use instead of an auto body shop. And that way we have more time to consider what would allay all these different concerns about the properties that have addresses on South Chester Road. So, you know, I understand the urgency of getting an ordinance through for the sake of this deal for the auto body shop. I understand the desire for a clear, well-written by right ordinance so that there's no question for a developer as to what they're permitted to do, and no question for the people in the neighborhood as to like what they've signed up for by buying a house in the neighborhood. I'm on the fence about the conditional use versus by right, but I think that if we were to split out the auto body shop from the other properties, then that alleviates some of this pressure to try and push something through that many residents object to fiercely. And as far as traffic is concerned, all the properties on South Chester Road have easy access to public transit. They're an easy walk both to the train station and to the CVS shopping center, as well as to the Ville. Anybody who wants to live in that neighborhood might very well want a place where they don't have to have a car. And some people can't afford their own car, and that's going to become more and more the case because the economy is not going to get better. And so if we could have denser housing without parking, then that might also alleviate some of the traffic safety concerns. And I'd like you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more hands? There's a hand.
Steve.
Oh, Sean.
Thank you. No, it's okay. Hi, I'm Sean Eyring, and I live at 316 South Chester Road. At the October 6th meeting, many residents, including me, asked you to separate the 3 Chester Road parcels from the collision center site and allow more time for public discussion. I appreciate the work that you all have worked towards a compromise. The alternative draft that I think Carol referenced shows real progress. And I thank you and the Planning Commission for that. I'm still not completely convinced, and I'll tell you why. There's word in the neighborhood about a possible development along Harvard Avenue between Westdale and Strathaven. If that's true, combined with the non-conforming sites, it's clear that the Chester Road corridor could be entering a period of significant change. Each project may serve a genuine community need, but the borough has a responsibility to understand their collective impact before deciding how to move forward. The 3 Chester Road non-conforming parcels form key anchors from Yale to Fairview. Each site is unique, yet each affects the corridor as a whole. Together, these sites influence traffic flow, pedestrian safety, stormwater, and overall scale and rhythm of this historic tree-lined approach to the borough. This moment calls for his holistic planning and design, an integrated look at how uses, density, and access work together along the corridor. Planning in isolation risks unintended consequences that can't easily be undone. For that reason, I still urge council to remove the 3 Chester Road parcels from the current ordinance and consider them instead through a separate conditional use framework. This approach gives the Planning Commission and the community the time, or could give the Planning Commission and community the time and opportunity to study the corridor more carefully and to test what the right type and scale of development truly looks like here. Holistic planning may take more time, but it builds understanding, protects what we value, and helps ensure that change strengthens the whole community. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Hands up, please. I'm seeing in the doorway there. Dan.
Oh. You guys know my name. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Well, my name is Dan Nish, and I live at 226 Cornell Ave, for the record. I'm here to address the elephant in the room. I'm going to echo everything that you've been hearing from the general populace, and I'm asking you tonight to reject the 4-lot by right rezoning ordinance and follow the common sense compromise. I commend the borough mayor, Marty Spiegel, saying based on what I read in the Swarthmore last week, this could have been resolved months ago if council had separated the collision center property and handled it independently. Everyone in the room could get what they want if the council would be willing to compromise, and that still remains true today. I ask you to adopt a focused ordinance for 630 Yale and apply a conditional use review for the 3 Chester Road sites. That's what the Planning Commission has recommended from the start. Instead, the council is advancing a one-size-fits-all ordinance written around one developer and one site and stretched to other properties. When that became clear through right-to-know releases and through how this process unfolded, I, like many residents here that you hear today, began questioning the motivation behind this push. And when some members initially, back in June and July, initially expressed disappointment that the original plan of a 5-story proposal couldn't move forward, that disappointment spoke volumes. The council continues to push forward their agenda against a straightforward and common sense compromise that the impacted citizens largely support. Decouple the properties. I also want to formally correct the record in preparation for my public comment. I read through the July 14th meeting minutes, and I was actually listed as being in favor of this ordinance, which is inaccurate. I have a written transcript if the recording secretary would like to see. At that meeting, I said I was concerned and not necessarily supportive. So I just wanted to correct the record there. In general, I think this process has lost credibility because of the pace and the tone. Claims that separating the parcels would cause major delay are exaggerated. It was estimated that it would only take 30 to 45 days, not months. And that's not justification for locking 4 unrelated sites into permanent developer-friendly zoning. I don't understand how 1 to 2 months of delay, how we're trading that off for potentially decades of unintended consequences, unforeseen. The vote is not about land use, it's about trust in local government. The Planning Commission gave you expert responsible guidance. The mayor offered a clear compromise. The public has spoken repeatedly. Yet the majority of the council seems determined to prioritize the speed and politics over prudence and balance. And I want to close by saying, one last thought, I know. I want to believe that we live in a borough that values integrity more than expediency, and tonight is a test of that. I thank you.
Thank you. Terry.
Good evening. I've stood here many times explaining why I support Draft Ordinance 03-2025. Tonight, I want to speak about trust, process, and how we hold community together when things get hard. First, at the beginning of this process,
Name and address, please.
Oh, 318 Brighton, named Terry Lamb, sorry. At the beginning of this process, everyone agreed we must avoid the illegal practice of spot zoning. Our solicitor, borough manager, members of borough council, and planning commission on both sides of this issue warned that spot zoning would expose the borough to unacceptable legal risk. Now, some of those same voices are asking us to ignore that advice and to believe that spot zoning is actually the safest way to get everyone what they want. It sounds inclusive and civic-minded, but it does rely on dismissal of our repeated warning that defeat or delay at this time will result in another auto body shop at 6:30. In this debate, some have claimed they haven't been listened to. But to support decoupling and further delay, we must also choose not to listen to or believe the repeated concerns of neighbors who say without this ordinance, commercial resale is inevitable. Second, as soon as it became clear in April that including Chester Road properties was the safest and most advisable path forward, outreach began. These neighbors were invited in, not left out. Their concerns about parking, traffic, trees, and stormwater were heard and integrated. Under this ordinance, if housing were ever built at Chester and Yale, parking would drop from 47 spaces to 16, permeability would improve, and tree cover would increase. Yet the claim persists that this ordinance reflects no compromise, when in fact it's infinitely more protective because of Chester Road's advocacy. To deny that reality is to overlook the collaboration at the heart of this democratic process. Third, some have described this ordinance as community destroying or against the will of the people, and yet those same voices have also publicly accused council members, you, of corruption, filed FOIA requests for your private emails, and even shouted that you should be indicted. They have accused you of dismissing expert advice and characterized educated outreach as collusion. This kind of rhetoric tears the civic fabric we all say we want to protect. Fourth, I live in a vinyl-sided house across from a row of twins with 10-foot front yard setbacks. Ironically, a neighborhood and a home that could not be built under this ordinance. It protects us from neighborhoods like mine. Maybe this is why I believe Swarthmore's true character isn't about setbacks or siding. It's about how we treat one another across neighborhoods and disagreements, the words we choose when we feel threatened, and whether we trust that a town can welcome change and still be itself. Finally, I am asking you again to support this ordinance to restore a viable residential option for these non-conforming commercial properties. I believe we are a healthy town that can welcome gentle change and still be itself if we move forward with courage and with care. Thank you. And I want to apologize. I didn't say my name, and then I was nervous about my time if I seemed rude. Okay. Terry Lamb, 318 Brighton. Sorry. And done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Thanks. Sorry.
Anyone else for public comment? Roberta.
I'm going to read this time since I'm a very nervous speaker. Roberta Riccio, 519 Rutgers, and this is a letter I sent to you guys from my husband Kai Dow and I from the same address. And I just want to reiterate that I really support many things that Terry just said. I'm writing once again to express my support to Ordinance 032025. The proposal reflects thoughtful planning, thorough vetting, and collaborative effort with the Planning Commission. I truly appreciate the time, research, dedication you've invested in shaping the ordinance, and I believe your actions continue to reflect a commitment to the best interests of our town. Last Monday's meeting, I came here intending to speak right away. When I saw so many of my neighbors had boards and things they wanted to present, I figured I should wait and hear what they had to say. And I did. And through that process, I still ultimately support this ordinance, as I didn't hear any really compelling arguments against the idea of returning these properties in question to residential use. You know, I know we already have traffic issues in our town, and they're not just at that intersection. They're also along Yale and anywhere we drive here. And those are issues that I think would be addressed anyway in further development of any of those properties, is my understanding from when I heard people talk, the council speak after the comments last week. Anyway, I'm going to skip ahead. One point of contention, I felt like, you know, there was a shaded board here that was a little misleading, because it's my understanding, and I may be wrong on this, but that shaded area showed historically where the development was. It wasn't this actual zoning that exists there. And the new proposal, my understanding is the setbacks would be bigger than what is currently for those properties. And, you know, I did hear some strong accusations against our board, and I did not hear anything that really substantiated those. I do think we need to try to work together on this, and maybe there's a better way in the future. But I do really appreciate all the work that you guys have done. I do think this is a good proposal, and I hope this ordinance, you'll support it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well,
Jennifer Baker, 306 South Chester Road. Borough Council is clearly set to vote on this highly unpopular ordinance. There are tiny measures that could make a bad ordinance less bad, but there's such an obvious and much better solution. All of us Chester Road community has been wondering why Borough Council has refused to separate out 630 Yale from the Chester Road sites. They could have passed an ordinance at 630 Yale months ago, and perhaps it already would be under construction. They could have passed the ordinance as it was originally crafted by Bill Cumby, neighbors of the Collision Center, and members of Borough Council who live in that immediate neighborhood. This is called contract zoning, and it's blatantly illegal. However, no one would have said a thing if they hadn't taken such a wrong turn. Borough Council threw in these 3 unrelated sites on Chester Road, ignored the will of the neighbors as well as hundreds of other Swarthmoreans, repeatedly put forth misinformation about the meaning of by right and conditional use zoning, and pretended to have consulted with our community. The small number of 630 Yale neighbors and members of Borough Council have insisted they know what is best for the neighbors on Chester Road and treated us as second-class citizens. We were not allowed equal input on the 3/4 of the ordinance that directly affects us. Why this undemocratic behavior? Clearly, some council members care deeply about the 630 Yale site, but sadly don't seem to have the same care for the neighborhood that will be affected by 3/4 of the ordinance, the other sites on Chester Road. Some council members also seem driven by ideology and even perhaps take pride in forcing something on a neighborhood, knowing what is best for all of us, clearly. If Borough Council were to start over and do things right, which they still can, what would that look like? Borough Council would vote to amend the existing ordinance to apply to 630 Yale only. If the neighbors there want 8 units and 75% lot coverage rather than auto body shop, I certainly get that. Then come back and engage your neighbors on Chester Road. Allow us to participate as the 630 Yale neighbors have the privilege of doing. Let us discuss in a public forum what would be appropriate development on the 3 Chester Road sites. Would 4 units be better than 8? Of course. Would different setbacks and lot coverage be better? Again, of course. But let's discuss what that might look like, given the unique situation of that busy corner. What about mixed-use commercial and residential? Please don't pretend there was a discussion that included us concerning the idea of mixed-use development. There was not. Commercial uses would add more to our tax base. But what are the pros and cons? Please allow us to explore and discuss all of the possibilities, of which there are many. This will ultimately lead to a much better outcome for all of Swarthmore than taking the needs of one site and applying it to 3 others for the sake of expediency, and harming so many of your neighbors and constituents in the process. Please treat us with equal respect and separate out the 3 very different Chester Road sites from your ordinance. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Oh, sir, you come up, please.
So, Neil Young, 6 Crest Lane, also here to speak about the ordinance. So we kind of reached a defining moment here for the council. Will it listen to the majority of people in town and the residents who've spoken, I think, reasonably and articulately about the reasons not to go ahead with this? Or will it go ahead with a plan that I think a great many people feel has been conducted behind closed doors and without the best interests of the entire community? And so communication isn't and of itself isn't a problem, and we should speak to more people and more often in more forums. And I certainly don't stand behind any suggestions of criminality or corruption. The truth's much more ordinary and more troubling. It's pure politics. There was a concerted effort to get this through before 2025, and that troubles me greatly. That suggests a political timeline, not a timeline for the benefit of residents. We've also heard the ideological driver for all of this, the need for affordable housing. But a handful of market rate apartments won't make Swarthmore any more affordable to people on average incomes. So the real issue is whose voices count. So you've heard Chester residents, the Planning Commission, and many, many other people here in this room being asked to accept policies that serve local political needs and national ideology, not residents. And so when power stays in hands too long for one group for too long, governments stop listening. And a one-party system, they don't need to be corrupt to be unfair. They simply go insulated and unaccountable. And that's how local democracy and maybe national democracy erodes, not for a single act, but people shrug their shoulders and assume nothing will ever change. The mayor last week, I think, quite reasonably asked the same question many of us have been asking: why the rush? Why combine Chester and Yale? Why so much resistance to conditional use versus by right use, or any of the other sort of reasonable ideas that have been suggested? And the answer is clear: it's politics and ideology. So I'd ask you to stop, pause, reflect, reject a political timeline, and work on a better ordinance that gets people what they need around 6:30 and a better outcome for Chester, and reject the political timeline. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Who else? James, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. I'm James Levine, 750 Harvard Avenue. I'm the chair of the Swarthmore Borough Planning Commission. I want to clarify one thing about why these 4 properties are grouped together, because there's been a lot of discussion about that, and the root of that comes out of the Borough Comprehensive Plan that was just adopted. These properties were identified for potential redevelopment throughout the process with overwhelming support. That's how they wound up together in this ordinance. Not to speak for Borough Council, but there's no nefarious intent in having these 4 properties grouped together. That was what came out of the comprehensive plan process. I understand that they're different properties. Absolutely they are. That's why I was always an advocate of conditional use in this process, and I remain an advocate of conditional use. You've heard members of the public have heard that there's going to be a proposed amendment considered tonight representing what I consider to be a very good compromise in this process that would allow up to 4 units by right, up to 8 by conditional use. I think it is a good compromise, gives voice to a lot of the concerns that have been addressed. Personally, I think it should be the ultimate vote. If not tonight, then next month. Tonight's vote should be to advertise that, not to vote on the original language that was going to be introduced tonight, the 8 by right. That's a decision for Borough Council to make. I understand there's a timing concern, that there's a concern at the collision center at 630 Yale that if something isn't done, that the property owner will sell it to another body shop. I would urge council not to cave to what I consider to be empty threats. We've heard about this months and years about I'm going to sell to another body shop. I described it as Lucy with the football to the Borough's Charlie Brown. The amendment language is good language. I think it's a great compromise, and I applaud everyone for working to get through that. One last word about conditional use. We've heard about conditional use and special exception. I'm a big advocate of conditional use. I think that there are a lot of benefits to the process. One of those benefits is that when something comes up for conditional use, it first goes through the Planning Commission, who makes a recommendation. We are your subject matter experts. And when I say yours, I mean the boroughs. We are here to help vet these projects and flesh out a lot of the concerns and try to craft reasonable, practical solutions. I think we did that with 110 Park, and I think that was reflected in the process. And
We're going to let you finish, James.
thank you. And using conditional use, having a second set of eyes, the Planning Commission followed by Borough Council, I think leads to the best possible results. You get the benefit of both bodies passing on a particular project and coming up with what I've always found to be the best possible solution. So I'm a big fan of conditional use and will continue to be so. Thank you for all of your work on this. I know that this has been a long and often contentious process, and I'm glad that the tenor of tonight's comments are a little more collaborative than some of the comments were last week. So thank you very much.
Thank you, James. Any more hands? Come on in, Janine.
Janine, adjust the microphone so you're speaking into it, okay? Just tell me. Now the swivel, just.
Janine Oceande, 313 Brighton Avenue, Swarthmore. I support the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. There was another hand. Gentleman at the door, please come up.
How are you?
Hello.
Tim Lowe, what's you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
620, yeah. Sorry. I went to the Urban School of Speaking, so it's a little bit frazzled. But I just want to follow up on the July 4th email that I sent to council.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Would you just speak into the mic?
Sure.
Jim, adjust the arm. The arm was tilted. Tilt the arm up. Tilt the arm up like it was originally, and then adjust the microphone. There you go.
Thank you.
I'm following up on a July 4th email that I sent to council and to the mayor. I probably should have just titled this ship has sailed, because I think I'm the only one that advocates for maintaining the 630 Yale Collision Center site. But I also agree with the people that want to decouple the 3 properties on South Chester Road from the collision center. Mostly I just want to say that I'm kind of shocked that a council that's willing to sort of fight for the Celia building and historic preservation generally is willing to do away with the building that's been there for more than 100 years and has served the borough well. I mean, it's not a use that maybe that we would all like there, but I mean, it hasn't prevented anyone from moving in next door to it, building houses next to it. And it hasn't prevented houses from selling for $1.776 million 3 doors away. Say what you want about the collision center, but it has, well, first it was a gasoline station, I guess. I mean, it predates the Borough Code, which was founded in 1928. And it was a gasoline service station until 1962. That was 4 years after my parents moved across the street onto the property. And The gas station was not a consideration for them. We came back from the city in 2015 and built a house. The body shop was not a consideration for us. Before Ron Ippolito purchased the property in 1978, it was owned by, I guess, the only black business owner that I knew in the borough as a kid, which was Lee Gregory. And he had junk cars all over the lot, some from the 40s and 50s, and I used to roam all over that property and play in the cars. I mean, granted, it was like a sleep store worth of glass in the side yard. But unlike many of my neighbors and perhaps a few members of council, I've been open to almost all the alternatives that have been floated and rumored since this property has gone up for sale. I was on board with beer, I was on board with the dentist. I mean, not thrilled to equal degrees, on board with the wrestling training center, on board with, well, just a commercial use, and also on board with the body shop, if that's what it has to be. But like, I guess it was Mr. Levine just said, I'm not convinced that that's a viable alternative. I mean, there are plenty of cheaper, more attractive properties around. They're not surrounded on all sides by conscientious and scrupulous neighbors. I would just like to say, the one thing that I do want to say, and I will wrap this.
Yeah, would you mind wrapping up? Thank you.
Okay. Is that I'm just not sure of the need, and people have said that before. We are a borough of 6,500 residents. We have the Swarthmore, Southampton condos. We have the Greylock, Swarthmore, Dartmouth Avenue apartments. There are more condos on Rutgers near Cornell. Several more apartments down the street on both sides of Rutgers at Harvard.
I'm sorry, we're gonna have to.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your
Thanks.
comments.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment? Yes, please come up, Zach.
I just want to say I don't think I should have this job next time. I think you're good at it.
I'll try to keep it short. Hi, Zach Berkman, Brighton Avenue. It's been 10 months, I think, as this process has been evolving. And there's been lots and lots of public comment and opportunities for input from experts, from residents, from all parts of the borough. Deeply appreciate the way that you all have listened, conducted yourselves in front of us, shared your thoughts and ideas, and found compromises so that this idea and this ordinance can evolve. I think it is a mistake to assume that because someone who, in this case the owner of 630 Yale, has been patient and has been waiting, given health issues, given desires for retirement, when really he could have already sold multiple times to another body shop, but wants to provide higher use and wants to create the opportunity for a pathway to restore residential housing, that we then suddenly think he'll just wait forever. We know that isn't true. I think anybody on this group would know that there are certain timelines that we all are at, and we've already passed his. So I think if there's a feeling that there isn't urgency regarding 630 Yale, that is a great mistake. And I really appreciate that you all are not going anywhere after today, and the ability to further amend or respond to further concerns about the other properties is possible. So I thank you for your time, and I hope you will vote for this ordinance.
Thank you. I am looking and do not see, holler out if I'm not seeing your hand up. Okay, I think that we will close public comment. Dave?
If we could close public comment, take a 1-minute break.
Okay, we'll do that.
That'd be great.
We're closing public comment and we're in recess for a minute.